In the 1960s and into the 1970s, we see a lot of movement. We see a lot of change. So we're going to be talking about, the parent movement continuing on. More advocacy groups are joining the movement as well. We're going to talk about another Kennedy, JFK, and then we're going to be talking about, again, another Kennedy, Eunice, this time with the Special Olympics. So on this slide, we're going to start talking about John F. Kennedy, or better known as JFK. He was our president. He became immortalized because he was very good looking. He had really good policies, and he was one of the first Kennedys to run for office. But he did really cool things for people with intellectual disabilities, and that's why we're going to be talking about him today. So in 1961, he appointed a panel to move away from institutionalization. That panel had 27 members of scientists, doctors, and other advocates that would help JFK with recommendations to give money. So in 1962, that panel presents 100 recommendations with data that proves that we should be doing different programs and different things for individuals that had an intellectual disability, or what they called mental retardation back then. In 1963, the recommendations were presented to Congress, who approves the money to be funded. So in 1963, JFK signs the Maternal and Child Health and Mental Retardation Planning Amendment, which is a mouthful. But what it basically was giving more funds for research on intellectual disabilities, the causes, and also research done on how to better care for these individuals and to move away from institutionalization. Now in 1963, JFK is assassinated. However, Johnson continues funding programs under that same amendment that JFK had signed. He also adds a President's Committee on Mental Retardation, and he does sign into effect a Poverty on War, which helps individuals that were living in poverty. So, Special Olympics. This is where Eunice Kennedy Shriver comes in. Eunice was Rosemary's other sister. There's a lot of Kennedys, FYI. She is the main component of Special Olympics. In 1946, there's a foundation started called the Joseph P. Kennedy Jr. Foundation. Now, it was started for another Kennedy, Joseph P. Kennedy Jr. He was killed in battle in World War II. This foundation, though, was established and started to help individuals that had an intellectual disability. So they donated a lot of money to research causes of an intellectual disability, and they also established research laboratories and helped scientists get started with their data collections. In 1962, Eunice Kennedy Shriver starts the Shriver Camp, which was for kids between 6 to 16 with an intellectual disability. And this was in Washington, D.C. She continues to grow this camp over the years. She starts another camp within the same year. A year later, she's starting camps in other cities. But she wants more. She is striving for more for these kids. In April 1964, a two-day conference on importance and benefits that exercise has for those with an intellectual disability. So this was actually run not by the Joseph P. Kennedy Jr. Foundation, but they did participate. May 1964, a conference on developing special recreational programs for the retarded is held. So you can see that there's a trend. There's a big trend of data being collected on the benefits of exercise for someone with an intellectual disability. In September 1964, the Kennedy Foundation establishes a board to develop year-round programs. So, Eunice really wanted these camps to kind of be a year-round thing for these individuals so that they weren't getting left behind and they were able to get out in their community and their society. March 1965, universities start offering an intellectual disability recreational program to teachers. So this was almost the first step of special education, really. They were saying that we could have teachers learning this to help within institutions and schools. July 20th, 1968, the first Special Olympics is held in Chicago. Now, 25 states and Canada participated in the Special Olympics. And it is grown. Special Olympics is all over the United States. It is year-round. There are Special Olympics in the winter and there are Special Olympics in the summer. And if you are ever wanting more information on the Special Olympics, please do your research and volunteer. They're always looking for somebody to come in and help with these individuals, and it's a really, really fun thing to do. The 1970s and the 1980s. So in the 1970s, we see a lot of landmark cases actually coming through, and we see some more advocacy groups starting. So that's what we're going to be talking about. Next, we're going to be talking about PARC versus Commonwealth of PA. So PARC actually stands for the PA Association for Retarded Children, and they had a case against the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So attorney Thomas Guilfoyle filed a class action suit on behalf of 14 children with intellectual disabilities and their families who were denied public education in Pennsylvania. So before we start this case, Pennsylvania had a law that if your child did not function at a first grade level by first grade, they were not permitted to go to a school that offered public education. There were other schools that were kind of like little institutions or little communities that individuals could go to if you lived in kind of like a bigger city. But if you lived in a rural area, most likely your children were never going to school. There were no schools around there for them. Going back to the case, this attorney used the Brown versus Board of Education as the example of injustice to the 14th Amendment. So he used other cases to basically win his case. He won. So PARC actually won the case, and this is the statement after the case. It is the Commonwealth's obligation to place each mentally retarded child in a free public program of education and training appropriate to the child's capacity. So not only was it saying that every child that had something wrong with them was able to go to school, it was also saying that we needed to meet those children where they were mentally. And so 28 cases actually followed suit in the United States in federal court. Other states were following PA's lead, basically. PA was the first state to pass free public education for children that had an intellectual disability. And you can see on the left, this was actually in a newspaper, about the case, saying that we should be putting the children in schools, and it was basically how you get a hold of the attorney to file a case. So next we're going to be talking about Willowbrook. So if you don't know a lot about Willowbrook, I would suggest you do more research on Willowbrook, the institution, but I'll tell you a little bit. It was an institution in upper state New York, and there was an expose done by Gerardo Rivera, who, if you do not know who he is a journalist. But this was kind of like his first expose that got on national television and kind of gained him some notoriety. And it was all about how Willowbrook, the institution, was not treating individuals how they should be and how the system was broken. And so this was actually shown on TV. So the next page that you're going to go to is going to have the actual 5-minute clip of Willowbrook. Now, there is a documentary out there, and it's about an hour and a half about Willowbrook and this expose by Gerardo Rivera. It is very disheartening and hard to watch, and I do suggest that if you have a hard time watching things that can, be really sad, you have every right to skip this video. Just know that it is out there to watch again somewhere else, or if you want to watch it in a different capacity. But we are going to show a 5-minute clip of Willowbrook exposed.